Oh, nice. Way to go. I learned that trick from Gina Carr. Apparently, that's supposed to get everybody to pay attention. Did it work? If I show hands, did it work? Did you guys look over when you heard that shit? All right, yeah, nice. All right, cool. Sweet. Awesome. Oh, look, I got it all day. I might just do that for the rest of the day, and that'll be the whole third day of Anarchadelphia, just this sweet noise. Maybe we'll like try to break it with our voices, like, yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up for the third and final day of Anarchadelphia. We have an entire day of fun planned. Half of that day will take place here, and the other half will take place at FDR Skate Park, which is walking distance down the street on 20th Ave. We'll give you more details about how to get there, but what's going on there is we're having a pro skate competition with skaters from all over the country coming in to shred for you guys and get big air. And there's also going to be a concert and a whole bunch of fun stuff. But before that, we have a lot of good shit planned for you today. So we're going to open up with a couple caveats, little fun stuff to get started, and then we're going to get into a health panel, and then we're going to get into the Free Ross initiative, which is one of the initiatives we've been supporting for well over a year now that we would like to see, support from everybody because it's a huge issue that affects all of us, not just Ross Ulbricht. But all right, to start, we're actually going to repeat a few things that we did on Friday because they were so awesome, and I feel like everybody wants to see them again. So we're going to bring out Bianca to do some dope-ass poetry. So without further ado, Bianca's going to start us off.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for all of the positive feedbacks for the poetry that I have written. Seriously, thank you so much. You guys give me a lot of courage to continue to put my work out there. So I'm just going to repeat the poetry. So this first one that I'm going to spit is, I went through depression. I suffered through depression for 13 years. I've been in and out of psyche hospitals. I've been on so many types of medications. I've been suicidal. I really didn't think my life was going to get much better, and it did. So this is a poem for people when you're going through hard times, that you can do it and you can get better. And just, I love you guys, for real. Like, this is an amazing conference. I want to thank everybody who put this conference together. This is my very first one, and I love it, and I will be to almost every other conference that's after this one. So. At times, my life seemed too hard. My heart had been too scarred. From abuse to neglect to the demands of every day, I'd have every reason not to stay. Many late nights wishing it would all end, I put the metal blade to my skin. Wanting the pain to go away, I could barely go on another day. Needing something real, or maybe something I could feel, found myself searching for a bottle. Yeah, I was no real role model. With a disturbed worldview, I didn't know who to turn to. I put my faith in all the wrong places, had me trusting all the wrong faces. But against all odds, I survived. They tried to keep me from my destiny, but I am blessed to be going 3 years strong. I found where I belong. No more pharmaceutical meds, no more wishing I was dead. I got a purpose that's bigger than me. I'm setting all my brothers and sisters free. Lost and hopeless is what they want you to feel, so it makes life hard to deal. But don't believe in the fallacies. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions create your reality. Don't fall into conformity. Make your life a priority. Hold on. If I can do it, you can do it too. Ain't no limit to what you can do. No need to be ashamed. Your darkness can be overcame. It all starts with knowing thyself, loving thyself, and healing thyself. Your life is worth fighting for, so shoot for the stars and soar. It's time to trust in your inner power, because look around, we are in our final hour. All right, and this poem is dedicated to a day where I looked in the sky for probably about 3 hours and I saw at least like 30 chemtrail lines just being laid out. And so this poem is inspired by that day and the anger that I felt. Chemtrail-filled skies, mass media spitting out lies. There's no more denying. U.S. military planes are flying. Just contrails, they say, as they continue to spray away. HARP and weather manipulation, public water fluoridation. We're all out here dying. When will they stop the lying? At first, chemtrails didn't exist. Oh, now the planet needs this? Humans caused too much pollution, so geoengineering became their cover-up solution. But global warming was never true. Their plans would deceive me and you. They keep our focus over here as chem clouds line our atmosphere. Aluminum, barium, depleted uranium, and arsenic? It's no wonder we stay getting sick. A chemical assault, a crime against humanity? What can we do to stop this insanity? Yes, awareness is key, but the masses don't see. On their phones, they stay focused, that they don't even notice that depopulation and mind control is their ultimate goal. As chemtrails fill the sky, I refuse to stand by. I will do whatever it takes, even if my voice trembles and shakes. Fighting for true freedom and love, I work for the one above all. Exposing scumbaggery is what I came here to do. So to the globalist elitist agenda, a big fuck you. We will not take this torment. We do not consent. Our path is to enlightenment, and on this journey, there's no stopping it. Chemtrail-filled skies refuse to believe their lies. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
It's always great to see art with a purpose behind it, you know? Like, it's one thing to hear a dope poem, but then it's thing to hear a dope poem that you're like, yo, I agree with every fucking thing she just said. That's awesome. All right, so for those who might have missed Friday, we had a surprise. Who was here on Friday and noticed what I'm talking about? All right, cool, good. So almost more than half of you missed it, so I'm glad that we're doing this. So from an undisclosed location, we were able to get a transmission from the one and the only John McAfee, who has become quite a figure in this space and has offered, thanks to Chris Rice, who might be in the crowd, he also might be outside smoking weed, which that's where my money is. But he hooked us up, and he got John McAfee to record a keynote speech for this event, and we played it as a surprise pretty much at the start of the event. So we're going to replay it now for you guys because it's that badass. So without further ado, John McAfee in digital form. Because if he was here physically, we would probably get raided by a SWAT team. All right, 1 second, full screen. Hey, audio guy, can you turn up?
Anarchist, I hope. I could.
Let's start from the beginning here. All right.
Since I.
Yo, Max are
Shit.
crazy.
Good morning, John McAfee here. Since I'm speaking to anarchists, I hope, I can speak freely. And what I want to speak about is government versus cryptocurrency. Now, what does that have to do with anarchy? It has everything to do with it. Cryptocurrency, for the first time since the electronic age, has given people, us, the individual, a powerful tool. What is that tool? It is the tool to unlock our cage from fiat currencies. Why would we want to do that? What is a fiat currency? It's a currency owned and controlled by some entity in some usually pyramidal structure. Without the US dollar or the euro or some other currency, we can't send our kids to school. We can't get medical care, can't get food, can't pay our rent, can't buy a car, can't do jack shit. Fiat currencies controlled by an entity means that we are controlled by that entity. They can increase the supply, devaluing what we have worked for, decrease the supply for whatever reasons. They can monitor our use. The banking system knows exactly what we have, where it goes, and when it goes, and sometimes why it goes or comes. We are at the mercy of the US dollar. But not really, because we have been given a tool which as yet we have not used properly. That tool is cryptocurrency. What do we do with it? We invest in it, buy Bitcoin thinking it's going to go up, and shed tears when it goes down, or we enjoy when it goes up and we get to sell at a huge profit. You've been given an automatic rifle, and you've been given invincibility, and you're using it like a toy. No, it's to be used. Why? The more it is used, the wider it spreads. The wider it spreads, the more things you can buy with it, the more things you can do with it. Now, the advent of privacy coins like Monero, like SafeX, like Apollo, that are absolutely private and secure, terrify governments. Why? They can't get into them. They can't see a single transaction, can't find an IP address, can't locate an individual, don't know what transactions are for. They are blind to that sub-economy that's growing within society. And if we understand this and use this and nurture this magic tool like we should, then this is the tool which frees us from the ultimate control of governments, which is financial control. Because if they can't control your finances, they can't control you. See this. Now, is this going to be an easy thing? Fuck no. I am proof positive. I'm in a tinfoil room in an undisclosed location because I tell the world what I'm telling you right now. Don't want to pay taxes? Use cryptocurrency and privacy coins and distributed exchanges, which cannot be shut down by government. See the beauty of this. Now, what are governments doing? Well, it depends. In India, they're making all cryptocurrency illegal. Well, good luck with that. I mean, you're going to have less luck than making marijuana illegal. I mean, 75 fucking years the U.S. has been crimping and making more extreme laws against it. It hasn't done jack shit. Because ultimately you cannot control what a person chooses to do with their own fucking body. You can't. Good luck with it. It's your body, not the government's. What you put into it, both ingest and into your mind, it's your fucking business. Not anybody else's. Nobody else's. So, by saying this, the governments are after me. Banks are after me. Everybody's after me. But I'm telling you the truth. This is what happens when you tell the truth. When the truth is unpleasant to powerful people. So, I know I'm rambling on. I do this. I'm an old man, and I have the right to ramble. This is the beauty of old age. But what I'm saying, what I have said, is the absolute truth, and you do know it. The question is, do you have the courage that the protesters in Hong Kong have? Because those motherfuckers, they're organized. They believe, and they're taking action. Do you have that in you? Because if you don't, I might as well be talking to the wind, which I don't enjoy. I mean, pissing in the wind is a no-no for everybody. We know that. So please, God, wake up and see what is in front of you now, and take this key, insert it into the lock of your cage. Set yourself free. Is it going to be scary? Fuck yes. Dangerous? Life is dangerous. Fruitful, possibly? Yes. The magic key that we've all been waiting for. And it's here now, and pick the fucker up. Open your cage. Thank you very much.
John McAfee, everyone. Pat, can you kill a projector? He's not paying attention. All right. So, this is what I've been actually looking forward to for almost the whole conference. My whole bag is, if you guys ever seen me talk or seen any of my videos, my whole bag is, you're not going to heal much of anything if you haven't healed yourself first. If you show up and you're, in pain and sad and depressed or unhealthy, and you're trying to tell somebody else how to achieve, vitality, health, and, spiritual enlightenment, it's just not going to translate well. They have to feel it from you. You know what I mean? They have to literally look at you, and just what you are should be enough to convince them that, like, hey, look, this might be a way to actually improve myself and to heal myself and to make myself feel better on a daily basis, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, on every level of our being. So I was very adamant in making both the State of Anarchy and this conference a very health-conscious conference. And so that's what this next panel is going to be about. I have some of my favorite people in the health field coming up to just do a roundabout on different ways we can improve ourselves in, again, all of those four facets: physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. So I would like to bring Gina Carr, Clive DeCarl, and Sterling Lujan to the stage, and I'm going to join them, and we're going to have a blast. Yeah, you want to? All right. All righty. Take a seat, everyone. Yes. How you doing, Sterling?
Doing well, brother. How are you?
Gina, thanks for joining us.
Try and repeat the speaker, the question. Yeah.
Clive, I'll take care of it, bro.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
Sure.
Huh? He's going to do the lights.
No cooties, eh?
Follow my No cooties. Closer?
Health conscious.
All right, guys. So I'm gonna give a brief introduction to everyone. This is Clive DeCarl. If you guys seen his setup, it's pretty badass. He's got some Tesla technology and stuff, which I like, because not a lot of people go that deep and understand the electromagnetic human and how that plays into health. So that's gonna be cool. I'm excited to hear all he has to say. Gina Carr gave a great speech about veganism yesterday, which is, I'm a vegan, and I know a lot of other people here are vegans, and I know a lot of people who have changed their lives for the better, physically and otherwise, from adapting a plant-based diet. And then Sterling, he is going to take care of your mental and emotional, because this man is probably one of the smartest when it comes to psychology, and real psychology, not that like shrink, get a pill shit. Drives me crazy. Oh my God. My girlfriend's a shrink, so you can just imagine how that works. But yeah, so all three of them have completely different sort of areas of expertise, but in my opinion, you have to understand all of this stuff to get the holistic picture of complete health. So I'm going to start off with a question. We can just go down the line. You guys can share that mic. Me and Sterling will hop on this one. What is health to you? What does that mean to you and to the people you try to heal?
Well, the World Health Organization definition of health goes along the lines of it's not just physical well-being, but it's mental well-being and emotional well-being. It's wide. So health is our natural state. Our default state is health. And how many people are actually in that default state of health? I would say in the Western world, probably less than 5% are at their real potential. And there are only 3 reasons why anybody gets ill: physical damage, nutrient deficiency, or toxic poisoning. Now, we're toxically poisoned at school by the ideas that were put into us that we can't do stuff. I've been explaining to a few people over the last couple of days that we are way more powerful than we think. For instance, about 10 years ago, there were experiments with fMRI scanners where they put somebody who was desperately ill in hospital in an fMRI scanner so they could see the brain working in real time. Then they say to a relative on another continent, think healing thoughts to your daughter now, and the daughter's brain lights up on the other part of the world because our thoughts are so powerful that for the last 10 years they've been able to measure them. And so if you're thinking nasty thoughts towards somebody, you're damaging their health. If you're thinking nasty thoughts to yourself, like I'm not good enough, I can't do it, you're damaging your health. But if you're thinking positive thoughts and radiating them, deliberately having your, what they call heart-brain coherence, where if you like, you're thinking with your heart. And you can measure the coherence of the waveforms of the heart and the brain. So the interesting thing is that after they did the experiments with the fMRI scanners, they went on with the same scanners to have a random number generator generate two types of images. One was a pleasant image like a flower or a butterfly, or the other images were like a car crash, something frightening. So every time the random number generator generated the happy image, the brain really didn't respond at all. But each time they showed the car crash, even if the brain has seen it loads of times before, the brain went eek every time. But where it gets interesting is the brain responded about 4 seconds prior to the random number generator generating the image. And so we have to realize there are several types of time going on that we have access to, and we in ourselves are so much more powerful than we thought. If I can just say one more thing before I pass it over. My best result a couple of years ago, I'd bought 4 really powerful frequency devices which I'd rigged together, and this client had got eye problems, brain problems, and pain issues. So I told him there was a good chance that if I chose the frequencies correctly, that he'd come out of pain, his eyesight would be better, and his brain function would be better. So he after the treatment, he's my happiest client I've had all year, right? Pain's gone, eyesight perfect, brain working fantastically, and I glance over and I've forgotten to switch the machine on. So, who's doing the work? Let me just tell you one more story that I just love. A placebo, just a regular white placebo, works way better than chemotherapy, way better. But if it's a blue placebo, it works better. If it's in a capsule, it works better. If it's in a capsule with letters on, works better. If it's in a capsule with letters on and it's 2-colored capsule, it's even more effective. And if it's got numbers on as well, it works the best.
Okay, well, I would describe health as the people that live in the blue zones. I really love studying what they do, and I'm getting some feedback here. So the folks in the blue zones regularly live into triple digits, and there are 9 different components of what makes what's theorized that contributes to their health, including socialization with groups of people that are like-minded, including getting exercise, but theirs is more called movement. It's not like ours, go to a treadmill or go to a gym or even get out and jog, that sort of thing. Just through their natural beings and their natural activities, they're constantly moving and using their bodies. And certainly their plant-based diet contributes a great deal to their lives. They're not fully vegan, but their diets are 95% plus plant-based. So that's considered one of the things that helps them to live so healthy. And so, it's inspiring to me that people around the world in these areas and in areas where they eat a lot of plant-based foods, they rarely have the cancers and the heart disease and lung disease, brain disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all these things that we have in this country that people just think, oh, that's just natural. You're getting older, you're going to get high blood pressure, you're going to have these problems, and it's just not true. And I'm just so passionate about helping people understand that there is a different way, and I'm angry, Mark. I'm angry. If you guys weren't here last night, he's told us we really need to get angry, and I really am angry that the information's out there. It's been out there, and it's just not being shared with people. It's being hidden from us, and I'm passionate about helping to get that word out. Thank you for letting me be on the panel to talk about it more. Thank you.
Hey guys, in my mind, this idea of health, according to modern psychiatry, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's this notion that we have to make sure we don't have any chemical imbalances, that we don't have anything physically wrong with our brain. In my mind, being mentally and emotionally healthy means being spiritually aware. It means being aware of our own sense of freedom. It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily suffer from some kind of these diseases or fit into some kind of cultural mold, this idea of normalcy. So what I really want to talk about is this notion that psychiatry actually contributes to our sickness and overall health. I've once said that psychiatry, what it really is the fallout of statism, right? It's a system that helps subdue people. They put people into chemical lobotomies, and that's what these pharmaceuticals actually do to people. So what I would say here is that we need to think about learning to wake up to what Charles Tart called the consensus trance, and I would imagine most people here are already fully awake, but we have to spread this idea. To be awake, we have to come alive and acknowledge who and what we are. And I think a lot of people who don't acknowledge this, they're going to the psychiatrist, right? They're feeling depressed. They're feeling what's been called mentally ill, and maybe they don't fit into the concept of what it means to be normal, and therefore they're handed some kind of pill like an SSRI or some other psychiatric remedy that actually makes things worse, right? So, and let's just talk about a couple of these real quick. I want to get into it. So, some people are given SSRIs, right? If you've been to by show of hands, has anybody been to a psychiatrist before? Yeah, quite a few people. So we know that these psychiatric medications over the long term actually cause more harm than good. Robert Whitaker, really awesome author in this particular section, said that we actually get compensatory effects when we take these psychiatric drugs that causes the very problems we're trying to cure. So if you're suffering from depression, you start taking these pills over the long term, it causes more depression, suicidality, and even homicidal thoughts. Some of you probably heard that a lot of these active shooters have had depression and had been given pills, etc. And some of that is up in the air, it's hearsay. But here's the thing. In order to help cure ourselves, we have to learn to come awake. I've done this by experimenting with the psychedelic compounds, with traditional medicines, with designer drugs. After I took these particular pills, and that's not to say it's without risk. These aren't completely risk-free. There are problems, but a lot of times you take one of these pills, you enter into a shamanic state, and you come alive and you come awake for the first time, and you realize that you're an individual human being, that you're free, and that you want to live your life toward its purpose. And what psychiatry does to us is numb and sedate us, put us in these chemical lobotomies, and disallows us to experience freedom and truth and dignity. Coming awake and coming alive by taking some of these psychedelic compounds or doing whatever you need to do to realize the truth and the nature of the system that we live in, that's where it's at. That's where we need to be. And one last quote I want to leave you with. J. Krishnamurti said that it's no measure of health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And that's the problem. We live in a profoundly sick society, and this is just incentivized by the psychiatric industrial complex. So not only do we have to be activists as anarchists, we're not out there just to change the system in terms of government. We have to be social healers and social therapists. We have to be out there helping people wake up to fight what Charles Tart called the consensus trance, where everybody's a numbed zombie slobbering their way through life. That's not how we want to be. We have to help people wake up and come to terms with who they are.
I pretty much agree wholeheartedly with everything Sterling just said. And that kind of leads me into the next thought. Like, it seems that the issue is not so much that everybody is like, making a bunch of bad decisions out of a place of knowledge and stuff and causing themselves to sink into like deeper and deeper illness. It seems like society is gearing us on this path and steering us through, again, the shrinks giving you the chemical lobotomies, the doctors prescribing foods that are known to cause like heart disease and stuff like that. And then again, the deliberate withholding of information that, like, for example, like Clive's work on Tesla and those electromagnetic healing frequencies. I went to engineering school. I have a college degree in engineering. I didn't learn shit about that. They didn't even touch on it. They were just like, oh yeah, there's like this electrical engineering society, and they're like, yeah, we're really, it's like this big like shindig, and they all have dinners, but nobody actually like pushes electrical engineering further. It's people like you and people like independent researchers that do that stuff. So can you guys touch on, even in your particular fields, how do you see the influence of social engineering and education and all of these nefarious forces in society steering us away from our health?
Well, the mistake that there were several mistakes that have been made from the day we were born. On the day we were born, we had language. There's a woman called Patricia Dunstan who explains how she was, I think, the first person to discover that there are 5 words that babies say from the moment they're born. And so from the moment we were born, generally speaking, our mums didn't understand us, couldn't understand a word we were saying. We were saying, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I need to be winded, whatever it is. And they didn't understand us, so that we were off to a bad start. The thing is that then they said, oh, the doctor will fix it. And we were given this hypnotic programming that just by going to the doctor, who clearly must know everything, and as a child you believe that they must know everything. I mean, I did. I thought the doctors knew everything. Didn't cross my mind they didn't. So we've got this misplaced faith. I mean, I wish I'd never sent any of my children to school. I think it was a really stupid thing to do, but I didn't feel qualified to do homeschooling, and I didn't know any group that I could take them to. But unschooling them as soon as possible, clearly, is pretty important, and we just need to take our power back. Not only are we hugely powerful mentally, but we're self-repairing. It doesn't matter what's wrong with us. Generally speaking, usually, we can self-repair. And so getting that knowledge as to how to self-repair, what minerals do, it's super important that we understand how basic our body is on one level. If you're low on magnesium, you get this bunch of symptoms. You're low on vitamin C, you get this bunch of symptoms. And with a little bit of study, we can work out, well, I know why Granny's ill. Granny's ill because she hasn't got enough cholesterol in her diet, or she's missing zinc or something. We need to be empowered ourselves so that in the event that things went wrong, we can fix ourselves, our family, and everybody around us. And so self-knowledge, I think, is what's really necessary, because increasingly the knowledge we're getting from social media and so on is distorted, and we don't know what's true anymore. So we've got to be personally empowered.
Well, as I've done my research, I was really amazed to learn that back in the 60s, I think, when there was a commission empowered for the Senate. The senators did this study, and they were going to put out the first food guidelines. And the food guidelines they were going to put out, they definitely said, don't eat a lot of red meat. And I didn't mention yesterday, but I imagine most of you guys know that processed meats have been categorized as a class 1 carcinogen. Red meat's classified as a class 2 carcinogen. And I know some folks probably don't have much respect for the World Health Organization and what they say, but they have done some research, and this is what they put out a few years ago. And it's still just not very well known. People are eating bologna and hot dogs and those kind of things and all the time. And so it's probably not very healthy. My point is that years ago, they were putting out this report, and I think McGovern report is what it's called. And they were recommending don't eat a lot of meat and eat more plants. And as soon as that was known that was going to be disseminated to the public, the ranchers and the farmers and those folks came out and said, no. We're going to withdraw all our funding from you. We're going to take the money away from the politicians, that sort of thing. And so that report died. And another version came out, and another version was published. So this is all available on the internet. You guys can go check it out. But that's just a great example. When you start doing a little bit of digging, you can find that so much of this information, it's just been changed, and according to what the big money's doing. And I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I'm definitely a capitalist. I have no problem with big businesses, but I have a problem with corporate cronyism, and I have a problem with the money being used inappropriately to guide these sorts of decisions.
So I want to start off where I left off. What the psychiatrists and the political ruling elite and the kleptocrats and all these nasty people really want is for us to fit into the box of this so-called normal society. And if we don't, we're supposed to go to the psychiatrists and figure out what's wrong with us. And they have this idea that I take great issue with, and you should too. It's called a chemical imbalance, right? This is what they'll tell you if you go to a psychiatrist's office, pretty much with, I want to say 75%, and we can talk about the details of this, and that's just my guess, but for most issues, most mental disorders, they say it's related to a chemical imbalance. This is a matter of fact for depression, to some degree for schizophrenia, and a variety of other mental health disorders. But here's the thing, this is a categorically false conception, and this isn't something that's a conspiracy or made up. There's actually some science that suggests that this notion of chemical imbalance is non-existent. And here's the thing, we'll start with this notion of a mental disorder, right? They'll say you have a chemical imbalance and it's a mental disorder. Here's the first problem. Mental refers to the mind, so what they're saying is that the mind is sick or unhealthy. So if this is actually a physical problem semantically, that already does not make sense. How can a mind, an emergent process, be ill, and then how can they compare that to a chemical imbalance? If you really had a chemical imbalance, the brain would be sick. But here's the reason for the confusion. They actually don't know what causes these mental disorders. They say it's a chemical imbalance, but they can't prove that, right? So here's a couple of the ways where they've actually tried to test for a chemical imbalance and what happened as a result of that. So they can only test, and we'll use depression since it's the main chemical imbalance, alleged chemical imbalance that people think about. They've tested this by taking a sample from the cerebral spinal fluid and testing the metabolite of serotonin. The idea is if serotonin, the neurotransmitter, is in lower levels in the brain, then you're likely to be depressed. But these studies have not been fleshed out, and some counterfactual studies have been tested, and it did not prove this out. Please read Robert Whitaker's book, Anatomy of an Epidemic. Book blew my mind, and this guy's well respected in this particular industry. But the idea here is there can't be a chemical imbalance. They can't even test for it. Here's what happens. You go into the psychiatrist's office. They're not going to test your cerebral spinal fluid. They're not going to take that and look at these samples and tell you, okay, I know for a matter of fact you have depression. No, what they do is they get out the DSM, which is their behavioral checklist, and they say, hey, you match the behavioral profile of this particular illness, so mental disorder, so this is what you have. Well, that's all nonsense. Did you know homosexuality used to be in the DSM? So at one point in time, you were considered mentally ill or physically sick because you're gay. That is absolute nonsense, and the same thing applies today for bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia even, and it just boggles my mind that people just continue to buy into this. What they're trying to do is box you in and make you think that you're sick, which also creates a situation where you feel entitled. You want to constantly go to the psychiatrist's office. You constantly want money. And at that point, you lose your individuality. You lose your sense of self. You lose your feelings of wholeness. And that right there is what helps keep people in chains, sedated, and lost. Because, of course, they then give you the psychiatric meds, which numbs and sedates you and takes away your ability to feel. And ultimately, that's what it's about. And now you can't address the traumas that you suffer with.
Yeah, sure. Hop in.
So, while it may not be a chemical imbalance, all the mental issues have a relationship to nutrient imbalance. Yeah. I mean, for instance, manic depressives, bipolar, usually niacin, vitamin B3 can be massively effective. Lithium orotate, not the lithium carbonate they give in the mental institutions, but lithium orotate can be incredibly effective for certain people. In England, they've banned lithium orotate. You can't get it anymore because I used to be able to buy 2 months' supply for $5, and that's way too cheap. Patient cured, customer lost. So, with the schizophrenics, what I found with them is again, vitamin mineral imbalance. But the schizophrenics don't usually want to change. I don't know whether you've had a similar experience.
I relate to that, yeah. A lot of people identify with their pain. Who would they be without it, Yeah.
Well, I had one person who had, I think, 13 voices, different voices. And actually, some friends of mine did a shamanic healing on the woman, and all the voices but 2 went away, and she said, you know, she asked, what do you want to do with these last two voices? She said, no, they've been my friends since I've been 3 years old. They've been talking to me and giving me advice. No, I don't want to get rid of them. It's just the others I wanted to get rid of. So it is quite important to understand that a lot of mental things are just a deficiency. You know, you're low on B vitamins, you're not going to have much energy maybe, you might not be happy. You know, there are so many things one can do. I interviewed William Walsh, who was famous for interviewing every serial killer in America, and Charles Manson, for instance, had the lowest copper levels of anybody he'd ever tested. He went into prisons and managed to persuade governors to say, look, can I test all the mineral levels of all your violent prisoners? And he found that by giving a lot of them zinc, the violence levels dropped by, I think, 70%. You know, so if you are low on nutrition, is your brain going to work properly? Well, probably, possibly not.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It's so funny how all this stuff is very interconnected. Like your guys' fields, actually, if you look at it from a grander perspective, it's all one thing. Like I'm reminded of what's called the vagus nerve, which is like this crazy nerve. It's like it connects your brain and your gut, and apparently there's more neurons in your gut than in the brain of a dog, which is insane. That means you have like essentially a second brain that's being responded to what's getting put in there. And like Clive said, there's like key minerals like zinc, magnesium, and all these things that in the standard American diet are omitted. Or you eat stuff that forces the body to burn those things in order to like keep you alive, essentially. And with just eating a healthier diet, sometimes that could be like a trigger to start this process. Like for example, there's abundant amounts of zinc and magnesium in watermelon seeds. So the government made a bunch of watermelons that don't have seeds anymore, and now and here we go. You know what I mean? So if you ever notice, the ones that are longer, they're the ones that have the seeds. So a little caveat: get those ones. Don't get the ones that look like little volleyballs. But to touch on that whole concept of the chemical imbalance in Robert Whitaker's work, that's really important to me because a few years ago, back in like 2013, I saw a movie called The Marketing of Madness. Who here has seen that? No one. Okay. Go home and YouTube The Marketing of Madness. That shit blew my mind. They taught the origins of psychiatry, the origins of the pharmaceutical industry merging with psychiatry and creating this duality between the shrinks who essentially just get in a room and vote on if something's a disease. There's no science. There's no like testing. They're not drawing blood. They literally say, okay, you show lack of focus and this, that, and the other. You have a disease that's called ADHD. And what I find that does in people, even people that I love, is that it creates this victim persona for them to get attached to and to use it as a scapegoat, as like sort of like, I'm a victim of this thing has power over me, and now I need, the government's help or the doctor's help to deal with it. And that is such a disempowering belief system. I come from the background where, I saw my sister go through this stuff with the SSRIs, and like she was going crazy. She had anxiety before and stuff like that, but this, like he said, it makes it worse. That creates the chemical imbalance. There was none, and then you're injecting this stuff that like messes with the way that your brain creates these neurotransmitters, and that now you have a chemical imbalance, and so that's why you're feeling worse. And I just find that like, what works were these two very powerful techniques. Well, I guess I'll include a third one. The first was meditation. Who here is familiar with any type of meditation? That's what I like to see. No wonder you guys are so happy and fun. But yeah, so what I found was, I just got into it when I was researching conspiracy theories and 9/11 shit. Some of the better videos ended with, the reason why the government is doing this is because there's a spiritual reality that they're trying to hide from you, and everything is spirit. And so once I started understanding that, I started looking into the people in those fields, and there's actually techniques you can do, which a lot of you have already done, that help you get in touch with that spirituality. Then I found out from a scientific perspective that when you're doing that, there's thousands of physiological changes that's happening in your body. You can change the microbiome of your gut by sitting still and breathing slowly. That's insane. You're literally rewiring an entire ecosystem of bacteria in your gut just by breathing exercises. And then when you get into the electromagnetic fields, you're creating and generating, you're essentially gyrating your body's electromagnetic flow when you do that with those conscious breaths. Think of your whole system as like a motor. That's how any type of motor fires. You inject a fuel source, it combusts, and energy is released. So when you do these practices and you do that, you actually increase the magnetic fields around you, which your cell walls pick up on that, and they get empowered by it. It's literally like charging you up. And then the last thing that I would recommend for anybody is if you're feeling, and this is especially if you're physically ill, fasting. Who here is into fasting? Intermittent fasting or even longer fasting? You guys are awesome. I'm glad this is going on the internet. Otherwise, I'm just preaching to the choir here. But yeah, fasting is this incredible, basically what happens is once your body finally is done digesting, which requires an immense amount of energy, all that energy gets redirected to essentially healing anything that's not fixed. And if you're in a pretty good shape, it just goes to like basically charging you up and healing your cells. And for me, fasting has given me mental clarity. It's given me emotional clarity. It improves my physical performance. So I train martial arts and I compete in like MMA fights and stuff. And when I go in and train on Saturday morning, I go in a fasted state. I mean, I've done experiments with myself. Like, if I eat a bunch of Chipotle before, you know what I mean? I just got this belly. I'm like trying to bounce around, and it's like bouncing around with me. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. But in the fasted state, I'm sharper, I'm quicker, my reaction time's better, and I'm lightest on my feet and most mobile. So there's all these simple things that don't really cost any money. That's the funniest part is like, again, a patient cured is a customer lost. These things that you can do for yourself are so empowering, and it just takes the willpower and the knowledge to understand it. All right, so my next question for you guys is, for anybody here or who's watching that is like in a bad place or doesn't know where to start, what is one thing that you would offer somebody as like a general, like, I guess like first step into improving their health and well-being?
Well, a lot of people are unhappy because, of course, they're not living the life they're meant to live. And I'd say to them, if you're unhappy, the best thing you can do is go out and help somebody else, because it usually works that if you take yourself out of yourself and help somebody else, because what we're really after, the positive side of our ego needs to be fed. We're all actually want to hear that we are loved and we are, people are grateful for us, whatever we're doing. So if we put ourselves in the way of actually trying to help other people, people cheer up. From a health perspective, when you mentioned anxiety, lots of us are anxious, worried, and rightly so in a way. But it can change from being a problem to a challenge with the use of magnesium. Most people, everybody in this room is probably low on magnesium, almost everybody. And you get enough magnesium, you get the balance right, and things aren't so worrying. Anxiety isn't so bad. So that would be a great start. And the other big one I mentioned the other day is vitamin C. Most people are low on vitamin C. Most people are low on vitamin D in winter. And you could empty the hospitals with just a few minerals and vitamins for very little money, I think. Drink more water, make sure it's filtered water. Never come in contact with chlorine or fluoride. If you've got fluoride toothpaste, don't ever think of using it. If you're eating bread that comes in packets that's got flour improver in it, don't eat it because that's bromine. It's going to be damaging your thyroid, reducing your iodine. And filter everything. If you wouldn't eat whatever you're putting on your body, like your shampoo, if you wouldn't eat your soap, don't use it. Be careful what materials you're touching, because people never used to be ill. It's a recent thing. Heart attacks hardly ever happened. Cancer was a massive rarity. 150 years ago, maybe 1% of the population. Now these things are 50% of the population. And we're poisoning ourselves with food primarily.
I think one of the most important things is to reorient your life around and make a priority of exercise. So movement, exercise, it can be as simple as dancing around your home or your condo, but decide on something that you like and that you're going to stick with, and then make it part of your day. It works better for me to do something every single day, and it helps me to actually go to a class. I go to a 5:15 a.m. class down at the YMCA, and the trainer there, he's great, and it's good energy. And when I am in routine, a regular routine, and I'm going every day, and I'm seeing my friends, and I'm getting that good exercise first thing in the morning, everything else in life just goes a lot better. And recently I had gotten kind of out of the habit, and I had been wanting to do a sprint triathlon. It'd been on my bucket list of things to do for basically 9 years. And so finally I'm like, this is a year. I'm not getting any younger. And I have a little foot problem. It's called Morton's neuroma. Too much information there. But it's just not getting any better. So I figured I better go. I want to go ahead and do the sprint triathlon. And it was good for me to set a goal and say, I'm going to go do this, and this is the date. And so then those mornings when I'm like, I don't really want to get up, I don't really want to go to work out. It's like, yes, I made the commitment. And the T-shirt that I wore for my sprint triathlon said, "It's because I said I would," and that's a movement. And that was one of the things that really helped me is you just take the decision making out of it. So it's 4 o'clock, 4:30. There's no question of, I don't really feel like it today. It's I'm going to get up, I'm going to take a shower, or, whatever the routine is. I encourage you to make exercise part of it, whether it's first thing in the morning or at another time. But I think when you do that, the rest of your life just seems to flow a lot better.
Yeah, good point. So I think for emotional, spiritual health, I think it's good for all of us, if we can, to have the most openness to experience and have an exploratory mindset. So early on, my awakening, my coming to terms with my mental health and with my emotional problems happened by accident, but I had an exploratory mindset. I was open to new experiences, and that's, I think, key. And here's what I did. I did drugs, right? I swallowed a pill of MDMA, and I'll tell you a little story. Before I took this MDMA, I was languishing through life. I spent my days playing video games, mainly World of Warcraft, but the point is I was using it as an escape mechanism, like an escape hatch. I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings. I certainly didn't care about the state or government, and I didn't care about my own slavery and my own servitude. But after I took this pill of MDMA, it completely busted my mind wide open. And I remember coming up on it. I remember the empathy that I had for myself, the self-exploration and the introspection. And I started crying profusely as I was coming up on it. And I remember I entered into this meditative mind state where I kept telling myself that I'm a lot smarter than anybody has ever told me I am. I'm a lot smarter than anybody has ever told me I am. And I kept repeating this to myself, and I started thinking about my childhood, and I thought about the public schooling system. I thought about my education. I had failed 3rd grade. I was given Ritalin, ADD. Oh, no. Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and I failed 3rd grade. I was put into remedial math classes, and it was absolutely awful. And this experience told me that I can do a lot more with my life, that I want to actually succeed. And that's not what the system tells us, right? Governments are, these drugs are bad, don't do drugs, these will destroy your life. No, what destroys your life is a system that is fundamentally broken and flawed because it's parasitical in nature. That's what's wrong. And having this openness to experience mindset allowed me to take this drug, allowed me to experience with travel, allowed me to experience other kind of chemicals, and this has helped me focus on my own self-awareness, my own self-wellness, and trying to be the best I can be as a human being and trying to fulfill my potential. And I think if we all have that openness to experience and we provide these opportunities to other people. Am I saying give them drugs? Maybe, if they're ready for that. But what I am saying is that you have to be open to change and transformation. And that's, I think, a key to becoming all that we can be.
I agree with that so much. It's so funny. We use the word drugs, and it's such a blanket term because, like, you know, when you think of drugs, a lot of people immediately think of things that are illegal. They get the government programming that comes up. Then if you can get beyond that layer, some of them think it's just, medicines that either come in pill form or, plant form. And then if you can even go further, I would argue that food is drugs. I would argue that what you put in your body has a huge neurological effect, just like Clive was talking about, on your brain function. So, and then you mentioned video games. I do that too. I love video games. And I constantly ask myself, I'm like, is this wrong? Should I be enjoying this? I hate this. I don't know. I'm having so much fun, but I hate that I'm having fun. And it's like, there's a balance there. But I think that in our society, we have a tremendous misunderstanding about psychedelic drugs in general. Like I mentioned earlier, my girlfriend's a shrink. She says it's crazy. You can't give schizophrenic people mushrooms. Their heads will explode. You know what I mean? And he is right. There is some risk with all of that. And but at the same time, my experience with all drugs, 'cause I've done pretty much. I've never done like heroin, but other than like heroin, I've pretty much done every other drug that you can do. And I've noticed over the course of my life. I mean, I started with alcohol. My mom told me not to smoke weed because it was bad for you, so I listened to her until I was in college. boy, was she wrong. Sorry, Mom. But yeah, my first all my high school friends were like, yeah, let's go drink in the park. It's fun. And then I tried alcohol. And I'm like, hey, this is fun. I feel like silly and goofy, and my inhibitions are gone. And you know, I don't realize that people are judging me because my fucking walls are down and I can't really process anything. And then, you know, in college that evolved into like cocaine, because after a while alcohol starts to weigh on you, so you need to use cocaine to get yourself back up to be fun and entertaining again. And then like there was a point in college where like I was literally like laying down in my buddy Josiah's room, because I used to go and play his guitar. That's my friend over there. And it was the day after a big binge with alcoholism and cocaine and stuff. And I was just like, I couldn't even keep my head up. Like I almost thought that like, I was like, shit, am I gonna die like by like the next hour? It was like I was laying down, but I was so in pain that I couldn't lay down. So I would like sit up, and then I would sit up and I would feel like my brain like freaking out. So I would go back down. And I remember when I started smoking weed more regularly. Now, I'm not here to say smoke weed will solve all your problems, you know what I mean? Because I know a bunch of people who use weed like video games, and they're just constantly blazing all day to try to escape from that stuff. But around the same time I really started becoming a heavy pot smoker was around the same time I started doing a lot of meditation. And what I started to do was, as a sort of a litmus test, was I was like, okay, how does this drug, psychedelic or not, affect my meditation practice? I started just noticing it as I would, you know, try various things, but then I really started experimenting it. And what I noticed was when I used marijuana, it was like my meditation experiences were louder. It was like I was tuning in like even more so to like the etheric life force that you tune into when you go there. And conversely, when one of my exes, who was a drinker, was like, let's go out to the bar. You never go out with me. This is crazy. You gotta come out and drink. Fine. I started doing that, and I would notice the first thing that would go would be my psychic senses. The sort of like, if anyone's familiar with the chakra system, there's like a crown chakra that's supposed to be where you draw in energy from like the Akashic records, which is essentially like infinite knowledge or like the God knowledge. You're like a siphon for that if you can open up that portal. And I noticed that before I even felt drunk, before I even started like my volume went, the very first thing after like 2 sips of beer was like I felt that psychic sense close up and shut off. And I would argue that cocaine did the same thing. So then I tried a couple other drugs. I tried mushrooms one time. Well, actually 2 times. I just ate mushrooms again yesterday for the second time. So that was fun. Just a little bit. But the first time I did it, I ate a decent amount with a friend of mine. Actually, Sonny, the other co-organizer. And he had a profound experience. But mine was awesome because we went out into nature and we ate these mushrooms, and I'm like walking around and like looking at nature, and everything was like fresh. It was a perspective that I had never taken on nature before. And I walked up to like a pond of water, and I was picking up the water, looking at it like, dude, imagine how crazy it was, the first person who discovered water. Like he went to his buddies and was like, dude, it's like this thing and it moves and it's liquid, you can drink it, it's crazy, it's reflective, it's alive. And I started thinking, and you would never think of that if you walked past a creek sober, you know what I mean? Nobody's looking at that thinking that crazy shit. And I started applying that to like everything else. I was like, well, there's been times in my life where like, oh my God, this is the first time this has happened to me, or this is the first time I'm dealing with this. And I realized that is what everybody goes through. You know what I mean? The first time you get heartbroken, the first time you get in a fight, the first time you fall in love. These are all things that like some of us are experiencing for the first time in our lives. And I remember I applied that to my parents, which before that moment, I was really hard on my parents. I was like, you guys indoctrinated me with statism and all this bullshit. You sent me to government schools and you won't fucking listen to me when I try to tell you about it. And I was so hard on them. And I remember sitting there in that fucking forest, wherever I was, and I was like, dude, I was my parents' first child. And they didn't know really what the fuck to do. Like they were just like, oh God, we have a kid now. All right, let's try our best. And I realized like that's literally what everybody's doing. My parents, my friends, my loved one, everyone in this world. And from that moment on, I never felt the need to come down on somebody from their shortcomings. And I might not have had that revelation if I didn't take mushrooms. So I really advocate these sort of psychedelics. If you're the type of person that it calls to you, there are some people who are like, fuck that shit. No, get that away from me. I'm fine. I don't want that. But then there are some people who like, they have like, you know, almost like a whisper that's like nudging them forward. And I'll end it with my story of the hardest, best, and most awesome drug that I've ever done that I would recommend everyone in this room try before you pass on to the next life. Dimethyltryptamine. DMT. Cool, yes. That's how hard of a drug it is that only a few people applaud. So, other than the people who applauded, anybody else have experience with dimethyltryptamine? All right, cool. So to give a brief caveat of what that is, before we get into like how you do it as a drug, you have to understand that it's an endogenous chemical that the brain makes. It gets made in your brain every day, and it's illegal. So you actually are all carrying an illegal drug with you right now inside your skull. It's just so many paradoxes in statism, but yeah, and the times where the most DMT is pumped into your brain and bloodstream, there's 3 key times: when you're born, when you die, and when you dream. So that's interesting. So like those are like 3 really weird kind of things that you don't often lump into the same category, but there's one common thread that connects them all, and it's this chemical, dimethyltryptamine. Has anybody ever seen the movie The Spirit Molecule? All right, cool. A couple people saw that. They really get into detail of thinking that this chemical, dimethyltryptamine, is almost like an activator for the portal to the spiritual realm. And before I did it, I only ever speculated, hey, that sounds like it was. All these experiments seem to be like that. All these people's anecdotal experiences seem to correlate that because everybody says the same thing. But then I was like, well, if I want to be a real scientist, I got to do it myself. I got to try the experiment. And I smoked DMT one time. It was 3 times in one sitting, and the second time was when I really got all the way there. I remember the first time I did it, I felt like, like emotions and had insight, but it wasn't like the stories. There wasn't like, you just explode into like the ether realm and you see like geometries that are so complex and everything like that. So the second time when we all loaded up again, we had like one of those vaporizers that like blows up a big ass plastic bag, and you like push the plastic bag in. They're called volcanoes. And I was pushing the bag in, and I took what I thought was a good hit, and I felt like I heard something. Like I heard something trying to communicate with me. It was like, just a little more, just a little bit more. And I was like, and I felt like I could trust this thing because there was a feeling coherence that came with like the message. And I was like, all right, fuck it. And I just took the whole bag, and I was standing up, and I remember immediately, like, it was like the lights started going out, and I immediately knew from like a place within me that like, this is what's going to happen. This is what dying feels like. And that was a little crazy, like while it was happening. So I sit down, and basically my limbs turn off, my body turns off, my physiology turns off. I close my eyes, and I am just shot into this realm of absolute beauty that I cannot describe to you no matter how many words I string together. It was like the most beautiful geometric shapes that were alive, breathing, moving, pulsating, changing. It was like a kaleidoscope that just changed whatever the kaleidoscope was over and over and over again. And I was in a really good state when I took this because I was floating at my buddy's float spot, East Coast float spot, for like 2 hours before this. So I was like super zen, in a great mood when I did this. So it was I'd recommend that. Do a lot of pre-spiritual like sort of preparation if you're gonna do something like this. And as I got shot through, I was like, this is insane. This is such a beautiful experience. And then 1 second, I was just like, am I going to be all right? Like, is this okay? And then as soon as that happened, immediately, everything that I was looking at turned jagged, red, dark, scary, horrifying. I immediately felt uncomfortable by the experience. It stopped being beautiful, and it started being a fucking nightmare. I was like, this is insane. But, like, whenever I have a sort of reflex that whenever I start to feel any anxiety or any sort of, like, what people would consider negative emotions, I would just breathe in and just bring myself back to that sacred space that I go to every time I meditate. And I did that during the trip while that was happening. And immediately as I did that and breathed in and calmed down, everything returned to the beauty that it was in. It immediately went back to that beautiful thing that I was looking at. And that was how it ended. I was just like, I remember when my vision came back, I was literally just saying, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. And the revelation I took from that is like, what I think I perceived was the etheric energy that literally permeates all reality. You actually get to see it if you take DMT. And then what happened was I understood that my relationship to that etheric energy was that it reflects back to me my internal state, my internal feeling state, and my mental state. And so if I put out, oh my God, is it going to be all right? Are we in danger? Then the universe, the etheric energy, all of this stuff reflects that back to us. And vice versa, if you put out, it's going to be all right, everything's going to be fine, just relax. Like my partners, they're like, are you guys nervous about this conference? Are you guys? I'm like, nah, dude, it's going to be fine. We got this. Back in February. And I literally had that sort of like confidence because of that direct experience with the ether that like, hey, look, this is how reality manifests. It manifests based on your feelings and your actions and what you do with them. And none of this insight would have been provided to me without those psychedelic drugs. I'm not saying I wouldn't have learned it later, but I am saying that these were key tools in helping me achieve this stuff. And if you guys are curious, try that. So we're almost out of time. I want to let everybody close with what is the one final piece of advice? If you could say one thing in 5 minutes to tell people about how to improve their health, what would it be? What's the most important thing for each of you?
Self-empowerment, magnesium.
Well, the short answer is eat plants. And I just have to add, though, make a decision that you're going to change and that your health is your priority. It wasn't that long ago that I was on 9 different prescription drugs, and I was drinking a bottle of wine a day. I was not getting any exercise, and I was literally in bed almost all day. I mean, my life was just really miserable, and this went on for about a year, I think. And but finally, I just said, no mas. Time to change, and made little changes and more changes and more changes. And so I feel younger now than I've ever felt. I feel definitely 10, 20 years younger. I'm de-aging, and I just have a renewed vigor for life, definitely. And got my wonderful partner back there. That's made a tremendous difference too. Is make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that empower you and help you and support you and are good role models for you.
Yeah, something I didn't get to that's really important is we have to nurture our relationships, right? That's the most important thing for mental, physical, and spiritual health. Love the people that are close to you. If you can love the people that you're close to you and you learn to love yourself in the process, you'll be happy. One of the most important things that I learned growing up, moving through life, going to college, learning about counseling, is how to connect with my partner and connect with the people in my lives and try to empathize as closely as possible. If we maintain those networks and those relationships, we'll be able to succeed in what we want to do in life, and we'll be able to love as strongly and as palpably as possible. And it's really a beautiful thing to have super close connections with people.
Everybody, let's just give a nice big round of applause to all 3 of our great panelists. Gina Carr, Sterling Lujan, and Clive Day Carl. All right, now this is actually this is probably the single most important presentation of this whole thing. Yeah, I got you. This is pretty much the entirety of like why we added this